Hi, this is Donna from Clever Crafting. Thanks very much for joining us today. We're going to make a nice and simple shaker card. This frame here actually was in one of the kits that we sell. I'll put a link for the kit down below. And that's what the original shaker card was made out of. But you can also do the same thing out of dies. So this is a happy birthday die. You probably have something similar in your stash. And I'm going to use it. I'm putting it on a 3.5 inch, I beg your pardon, by 3.5 inch card. Now I cut the card to actually be just a little bit bigger than my die. And I've cut a piece of acetate to go behind it. All we need to do is grab some double-sided tape, and we're going to put the double-sided tape around the outer edge. Now, in hindsight, I feel that it would have been much better for me to put line the double-sided tape on the inside of the frame edge instead of the outside of the frame edge, because the double-sided tape is a bit wider than my actual frame. I'm burnishing it down to make sure it's well stuck, and you can see that white bit on the inside is the double-sided tape. Not to worry though, what I've done is I'm just going to remove the backing paper and I'm going to fold the tape over on top of itself, which is exactly what I would have had to have done if it was hanging off on the outside edge, but on the outside edge it was straight and would have been easier to do. Anyway, you learn something every day, don't you? So now that I've removed all the the release paper from the double-sided tape, and I folded over all my tape so I haven't got anything sticking out, I'm going to put my acetate piece on top. Now my acetate piece, as I said, is cut a little bit smaller than my die, so it doesn't hang out over the edge. Perfect. And I'm going to burnish that down. Now, a couple of things when making shaker cards is you want to make sure that you use really strong double-sided tape when you're using it with acetate. Glue isn't always very good, and that you burnish it really well. So now what I'm doing is putting some double-sided foam tape around the frame. So I've got the die, the double-sided tape, the acetate, and now some double-sided foam tape. So I use double-sided foam tape that I get from Bunnings here in Australia, which is a big hardware store. It's 1 millimeter thick and it's about 1.2 centimeters wide. So I actually fold it on top of one another, take a big strip out, fold it on so it's double. And then because the release paper is on both sides, I can just use my scissors and cut those fine strips that I use around the edge. And my scissors don't get sticky, very important. Just burnishing down this double-sided foam tape. People don't often do this, but it's really important to make sure that it doesn't come off, that it's really well attached to your frame there. Now, this is my anti-static pad, and I am just using that around the edges to make sure there's no sticky, because I don't want any of my lovely shaker bits stuck to the outside of my frame in the shaker section, because then they won't shake, and that's annoying. Okay, I got these amazing, so amazing, beautiful shaker pieces. I will have them in my store eventually, but I've only just got them, so I haven't packaged them all up. But I had so much fun with them, playing with them here. So this, I guess, is a preview. Couldn't help myself, was going to go light. Look how many I ended up with. I mean, that is crazy. But, you know, they're fine and they're sweet and they're shiny and they're lovely colors. So I couldn't help myself. The double-sided foam tape, I'm taking the release paper off two diagonally opposite corners, just a little bit, and folding them back so I can use the other two corners that don't have the release paper removed to position it to make sure it's perfectly in the center over my card. What I didn't say is that all of that filling went directly on the card front. And now that I've got that pocket positioned correctly, I am just moving the release paper, pushing it down a little bit with my finger to make sure it doesn't move, and sticking all of that down. Of course, I'm not going to trust that when I start shaking this, which is, you know, what I love to do, that it's not going to fall apart. I'm going to really burnish that down once again with my bone folder to make sure it's really well stuck. So, I think there was one standing in the wrong place there, so I'm doing that around the outside. And then I started shaking, and honestly, when I was rewatching this, I just shook it for so long. It was so much fun. It makes such a lovely noise, and they're so pretty and shiny. So I'm not going to make you watch that, but here's a picture of the finished card. I've got some at the end as well. So now let's get on to the second card that we're making today, which is why my video is a little bit longer. This one is going to look more like the original one that I showed you. So I started with using my metric rectangles, and I used the largest one, which is an A6 size, and then the third one in, which is, well, you know, a little bit smaller. And I used masking tape to join them together, and I cut 2 frames out of them. So I'm just showing you here that I used the largest frame to cut the backing that I'm using for this shaker pocket, and that it's the same size, the A6 size, as the card base that we will be putting the completed pocket on. I also went through my stash and found these great butterflies, which I also have some of these in my store. So I will put a link for these below as well. But you will probably find, once again, something in your stash. I want to try this. I've got some teacups that I think it would be nice with this technique. So I'm just going to now position these butterflies around the edge of one of my frames. You can see I've got the other frame up in the upper right hand corner of the table there. I am just positioning this. I spent way too long fiddling with this. I think it was like 20 odd minutes or something crazy that I spent positioning these butterflies. I just think that was way too much time. A bit of an overkill. Don't need to do that. But you know, I'm a little bit like that. But I finally was happy with how they were positioned. So now what I'm going to do is grab some of my Smart Art glue, and I'm going to put the glue around the just the edge, the lower edge at the moment of that frame, and I'm going to grab my butterflies and put them back where they were originally, if I can pick it up off the table. So here we are. I'm just positioning them so you can see that I'm sticking them on the frame, on the edges of the frame. And this next one, I'm going to stick it on the frame, and I'm going to stick it also to the first butterfly, you know, where they've overlapped. These will be quite secure, but you don't have to worry about them being overly secure because they're not going to go anywhere. It's not like they're flapping off. We're going to have the acetate underneath them as well. So as long as they're not going to come undone, everything's fine. They're not going to get caught on anything. Nothing's really going to rip them off. So I'm just putting some glue on the side and on the little antenna of the one at the bottom there to stick this butterfly on. You can see that the wing is overlapped off the outer edge of the frame there, but we will trim that off. There will be a couple of others that will be hanging out. We'll trim those off as well. So I'm just going to stick this last little butterfly on. I'm quite pleased with how that turned out. That's very cute. I just need to remove that glue from the my pad underneath, because I don't know about you, but I couldn't even count the number of times I've accidentally stuck a part of my project to my mat. Crazy. And then we have to start all over again. So anyway, I'm just putting the Smart Art glue around the frame again. So this is on top of the butterflies and everything all around on the top of that frame. I'm going to grab the other frame and plonk it on the top. So the best part about using wet glue for this, and I think it's important that you do, is so you can move the frame and you can see how similar they look, and you couldn't tell that they were different. The first one, of course, was cut out in one piece, and this one we made ourselves. So I'm just lining this up. You can see now in my stamping platform with my butterfly frame over the top of the back mat piece. The reason that I'm doing this is because I've decided I want my greeting to be on the back piece. So I'm using it to line it up in my platform. I'm going to remove the butterfly frame without removing my backing piece. I'm just going to grab my anti-static pouch here, lay down some of that powder because I'm going to do some embossing. I'm going to use my Versamark, which is, you know, the prince of all sticky inks, and going to just pop that over onto my card. Now it actually looks, when I look at my fingers there, it looks like I'm pressing hard. I'm not at all. You want to be firm, but you don't want to press too hard, particularly with the clear stamps, the photopolymer stamps, because sometimes they can distort a little bit, so you don't want to do that. Just be firm. This time I'm holding it down a little bit just to make sure that ink transfers off the stamp and soaks into a little bit of the card. I probably really need to re-ink my Versamark, but that's fine. And I'm using some Wow super fine white embossing powder on the top of this. Okay, my heat gun has been heating up there, and I am still totally fascinated and love watching the embossing powder melt. It's just, I never get tired of it. Ever get tired of it. You know, it's a little bit like popping those little, bubble wrap? That's what it's called. Oh my goodness, that's so much fun too. Anyway, don't get tired of that ever either. Just going to flatten this out a little bit. If you're concerned about how it's warped, you feel free to just pop it under something heavy for a little while. It'll flatten out in no time at all. Now I'm just going to trim off these wings. We talked about that a little bit earlier. And then we're going to go through the same process with this that I did with the first card. So I'm going to put the double-sided tape on the back of the frame. I'm going to position the acetate over it. Then I'm going to use the double-sided foam tape that I've trimmed and put it all around the edge. Not going to make you watch all of that. So now I am putting the filling directly onto the backing piece. So I'm adding a few extra colors this time. Can't get enough of this stuff. It's so lovely. You can see I've got plenty in there. I have done taken up the release paper a little bit on two diagonally opposite corners. I stood up to position this. Still got it a little bit crooked, so I'm just trimming some of the blue stuff off underneath. Okay, so that looks neat. Yes, neat. Am I happy? No, I'm going to trim a little bit more here. So I've left this in to show you, it's okay to trim and to tidy up. We all have to do it. I'm just using some of my Smart Art glue on the back of this. So this is going on cardstock. And so there's two pieces of cardstock, the card itself and the blue piece I'm putting the glue on. So I like to use wet glue here rather than double-sided tape because it'll help me make sure it's all totally lined up properly, particularly since it's covering the whole card. You want to make sure that everything's just right and in the right spot and you can't see anything. So there we have that, pressing that down and shaking and shaking. Oh my God, it's so cute. It is so, so pretty. I was really happy with these cards today. So I hope you enjoyed this and that you learned something. I would love it if you subscribed and gave me a thumbs up. It helps my channel to grow. I've also got we've got a Facebook page called Gold Coast Crafters if you would like to join and have a look at some of our other creations. Thanks for joining me, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Bye.